Have you ever tried reading a textbook to fall asleep? I mean, it usually works, right? But definitely not for the reasons the author intended. Well, today, we're diving into a really cool creative challenge. How do you take dense, complex science and intentionally transform it not into a lesson, but into a lullaby? Let's get into this creative alchemy. And that really is the core question, isn't it? I mean, think about it. A textbook is built to switch your brain on, to make you focus, learn, remember stuff. A hypnotic script, on the other hand, is designed to do the exact opposite. It's supposed to quiet that analytical mind, to help you just drift away. So how on earth do you bridge that gap? How do you turn facts that are meant for studying into feelings that are meant for sleep? Okay, so to figure this out, we've got two key pieces of the puzzle. On one side, we have our source material, a dense, super fact-filled astronomy textbook. And on the other side, we have our destination, a creative brief for a sleep aid. And this brief has a very, very specific, almost poetic set of rules. And yeah, this really gives you a perfect snapshot of the challenge. On one side, you've got the raw material, a page straight out of an astronomy textbook just packed with data and facts. And on the other, our goal, to create this feeling of soothing, hypnotic calm. The mission, if you will, is to somehow take all that information from the left and pour it into the container on the right, totally transforming it along the way. So what's really interesting is that the creative brief, it doesn't even start with the facts. It starts with a feeling. The first set of rules is all about creating a very specific atmosphere. It's not so much about what you say, but about the entire world you build with your words. And what's so fascinating is you can see how each of these rules is basically a switch. It's designed to systematically power down the learning part of your brain. That incredibly slow pacing, it just lowers your cognitive load. The soft sensory vocabulary, that stuff bypasses your analytical brain and aims right for your feelings. And instructions like emphasizing majestic movements or framing storms as art, that's all about reframing things that could be jarring into something beautiful and, really soothing. This quote right here is the perfect example of what we're talking about. I mean, scientifically, a storm on Jupiter is an incredibly violent event. But for helping someone sleep, yeah, that fact is not helpful at all. So the rule isn't to lie about the storm, but to completely change our perspective on it. Suddenly, it's not violent weather, it's ancient, slow-moving art. That one instruction, that is the key to this whole transformation. Okay, so the second set of rules is all about structure. See, it's not enough to just list a bunch of soothing facts one after another. You actually have to guide the listener's mind. And so the brief lays out this really clear three-act story to gently lead someone from being totally awake and alert all the way to being ready for sleep. And what's so brilliant about this is that the structure creates this predictable, safe path for your mind to follow. The descent, that's the welcome mat, the chance to settle in. The gentle journey, that's the main event where all our transformed science facts get to shine. And then the drift is like the off-ramp where we slowly fade out all the information and just leave the listener with that peaceful feeling. All right, so we've got our rules for the atmosphere and we've got our map for the journey. Now comes the really fun part. Let's actually see this transformation in action. We're going to take a couple of dry, factual statements straight from the textbook and apply all these rules to turn them into lines you'd hear in a sleep script. So here's our first before example. This is a great piece of trivia, right? It's precise, it's comparative, it's factual, it's perfect for a science quiz. It basically asks your brain to process numbers and make a comparison. But if you're trying to fall asleep, way too active. Your brain is doing math. And now here's the after. I mean, the transformation is just remarkable, isn't it? We completely lose the numbers that 9 hours and 56 minutes is gone, and instead we get a feeling. The script invites us to feel the majestic rhythmic rotation, a gentle ancient spin in the velvet darkness. The core idea is still there, rotation, but we've traded hard data for pure poetry. We've gone from information straight to imagination. Okay, let's do another one. So the textbook describes Saturn's rings as a huge collection of icy fragments, all orbiting the equator of the planet. And hey, that's perfectly accurate. It's literal, it's physical, it's good science. And now look at the sleep script version. The transformation is just beautiful. A huge collection of icy fragments becomes a silent, suspended river of ice. And that word undisturbed, that is so important. It immediately gives you this feeling of safety and calm. We've taken what is essentially a chaotic collection of millions of little ice chunks and reframed it as something totally serene and peaceful. So, what's the big takeaway here, beyond just making cool cosmic lullabies? Well, this whole exercise is a really powerful lesson in communication. It shows that the exact same set of facts can tell completely different stories, all depending on the frame you put around them. The science itself didn't change at all, but the feeling, the purpose, and the impact, they changed completely. And this brings us to a really interesting, kind of counterintuitive idea. You'd think that a long list of rules like the ones in that creative brief would be super restrictive, right? But in reality, they were the exact opposite. Those constraints weren't limitations at all. They were a roadmap. They gave us the exact tools we needed to channel all that raw information from the textbook into a very specific and very powerful new form. And this idea applies to so much more than just sleep scripts. Whether you're explaining complex data to your team at work, teaching a really tough subject, or even just trying to share an idea with a friend, remember the power of the frame. Any fact can just be a fact, or it can be the beginning of a story. So the only question left is, what story are you going to reframe next?